had to give advice to maybe a young athlete who is in your circumstance, what would that be? What would that advice look like?
I think for me, the best part was that I would go to some things and I would be really uncomfortable. And I just knew that I needed to do it and I needed to push through because at the end of the day, the more that you put yourself out in uncomfortable situations, the less you'll feel uncomfortable in, your regular circumstances. And so for me, just getting that experience, that varied, unique. I mean, I had such a quick rotation of goalkeeper coaches through my club, but as long as I maintain that consistency of showing up every day, for me, that's all that mattered. And yeah, I was maybe not getting the best coaching, the best, level of play, but the experience is all that mattered at the end of the day. And I was able to push through and kind of teach myself and learn and grow in those unique ways that I wouldn't change at all if I were to go back and do it again.
I think one of the biggest and most important things, obviously, at the Keeper Institute is that we help goalkeepers reveal who they are and refine their character through sport, right? And becoming the best goalkeeper you can be is important, but ultimately becoming the best human you can be is way more important because that's something that lasts with you for your lifetime. And also, if you put more attention to your character, it's simultaneously going to make you a better goalkeeper. And you can insert any positive character trait. And if you're more of that more often, you're going to be ultimately a better goalkeeper. When you look back on that, you might not have consciously known that as a young player, but can you identify maybe one or two character traits that you were like, yes, that character trait made me the goalkeeper and person that I am today?
I think resilience obviously is a massive one for goalkeeping. I think that pushing through, there was moments where I would be embarrassed on the field, and I was just like, well, I've just got to keep pushing, and I've just got to, keep playing because they're going to need me eventually again. And I think for me, I am just extremely bubbly person, and so trying to translate that onto the field and trying to, figure out how I can showcase my personality. And so I think that kind of, I don't know how to describe that into a singular personality trait, but I think that that's just a way of, characterizing yourself. At the end of the day, we're all different, we're all unique. And so for me, it was like, how can I bring a smile to everybody's day time and time again? And I think, yeah, it's not a goalkeeper specific trait, but it's going to make an impact to everybody around you and it's going to build each other up.
I just want to connect the dots there for a second because in my head, the more you like people, the more likable you become, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you walk in the door and I say, "Hey, Mom, how's it going?" Right? Like you feel a certain way about me, right? And the more I can extend myself and be kind to other people, the more people are going to be kind to me. How that shows up in a game, the more intentional I am to create those relationships with my backs, the more they're going to put their body on the line to block shots for me, right?
Mm-hmm.
The more they're going to be there when I need to be encouraged, when I need to be picked up. And, I have been reflecting back on my playing career and more recently, and there's this player that I played with for only one season. She played with me 1 year, and it was my freshman year, and I had these like big expectations on me, my redshirt freshman year, and I had a couple bad games back to back, and I was feeling down on myself. And she wrote me a card, and I will never forget that card. Like to this day, 25 years later, it's still so meaningful to me, and it had shaped me, right? Like not only did it help me in that moment, but when I reflect back on it, now sometimes when I see people struggling, I write them a card or I send them a note or something. And that buy-in creates stronger relationships, which ultimately makes me better and the person that I'm in that like greater relationship with. So simply by being kind, it does make you a better goalkeeper. It impacts you on a regular basis. It impacts your team and the outcomes as well.
I feel emotional about that. I don't know why, Jill, but it like brought a tear to my eye. Like I felt like I could cry about that experience. I love that.
Yeah, and honestly, like I remember the card to this day, and she wrote a quote in it, and it said, "Sometimes we're taken into deep waters not to drown, but to be cleansed." And I loved that. Like it obviously 25 years. I still remember that card. I still remember that quote. Like, and this kind of like extends back to what we talk about at Camp Mall. Like when you work in camps, like
Mm-hmm.
you're here because of someone else. You're here because of someone else's influence, and you also have that ability to, be that person for someone else.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely incredible. Um, and it just shows the impact that you can have in such, small little stepping stones that eventually it's going to lead a path that you've created. And I just feel like that's so important to me, especially maintaining my life in the goalkeeper realm. Those relationships, they all matter and they're all so valuable.
Which kind of leads me to my next question for you, Mal. Like, so we talked a good amount about your youth career, and then we talked about like college, and you go to Colorado College, and your coach left, so you transfer and you find your way at LSU, and then we're lucky enough to get a chance to work with you. And I, I kind of kept thinking about like what you were saying about your playing and like your character traits that made you an incredible goalkeeper, but an even better person. And I know for a fact that those are the things that drew Jill to you. Like when watching you, it was like, we gotta invite this goalkeeper to be our intern. And then you're our intern, and I'm like, oh my God, this makes so much sense. Like this person is amazing. She's a great goalkeeper, but wow, her personality is just incredible. And I just feel like you're one of those people that walks through the door and I'm like, oh, it makes sense that they're here. I just feel like they're family already. Um, so we talk about that, right? Let's talk a little bit about after your final season, you decide professional playing is something I want. Um, were you interested in like a certain area? Did you contact certain clubs? Like, what was your process like once you realized that playing pro was what you wanted?
Yeah, thank you so much, Tori. That means a lot. And I think for me, I probably didn't fully see the doors into the professional world open up until, I entered the Keeper Institute and I was able to kind of just see exactly how it worked for me. But going to LSU, I had a little bit of an imposter syndrome at first, and I was like, "Whew, I don't know if I can do this." I've come from such a small area, and I'm moving up into the big world. But leaving LSU, I was like, it's not my time to stop. I've already pushed myself all the way here. There's so much still in store for me, but I was going back to the fact that I'm a perfectionist. I think that I had burned myself out so much on trying to be the absolute perfect Molly Swift that I could be at LSU. And so when I was looking into playing pro, I just knew that I wanted to really switch up my environment. And, I was fortunate enough to be in talks with you guys, especially through the process. You were able to witness that. But I, got an agent, really fortunate to have that support from him. And, we were in talks, and this Icelandic opportunity came up, and I had an Icelandic teammate, so I was like, I know the lay of the land a little bit. It seems like a good opportunity. She confirmed that they're a great club and a good coach, and I was able to have a Zoom call with him. It was almost a little bit of like interrogation. I liked it though, uh, but no, I got a really good feeling out of that, and then I was fortunate to be training with a few other pros for the Keeper Institute, and just talking with them, I realized I didn't know if I wanted to go to the NWSL right away, because I just felt like I maybe needed a bit different experience and to kind of get my feet on the ground a little bit better. Just leaving LSU and being so, I didn't realize the emotions then, but I was a little bit burnt out. And so, yeah, this opportunity came. I was fortunate to communicate with some NWSL coaches, but at the end of the day, just to better myself as a player with experience and being able to go and continue to play and reset myself a little bit with better intentions, which I think I've gained over the year. I decided to go with the offer to Iceland. Went there, freezing cold, but gotta love it. So yeah.
That's awesome. I think it's going to be really helpful too, as well, because I feel that a lot of people don't necessarily know what are my next steps if I want to play overseas, or what are the next steps post college if I think professional might be the thing for me. There's a lot of question marks in the air. So hearing people's story is super helpful to goalkeepers that have those aspirations. Now let's talk a little bit about the transition. Obviously, you're stepping foot into a new country, a new culture, a new style of play, a new level, right? You're playing pro. You were just at college. So what was that transition like for you?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely had to take some time, and, just college really takes you out of you, and you realize that after the semester's over and you're like, oh crap, I, um, really put in way too many hours in a day. But I was able to go there. The first day, I still remember the first day I arrived, I got into this taxi. It was pitch black, drove me 45 minutes to my house, that I was staying at. And then, I decided that I didn't need any snacks from the airport. So I had absolutely no food on me. Um, and,
Really?
s- and so, I ended up having to, it felt like I was having to like actually go and like walk for my food. And I don't think I've ever had that experience, ever in my life. So, and I was trudging through, I think it was like a foot of snow and ice. But I found this little cafe and I just sat there, had a really good, croissant and a coffee. And I was like, okay, I'm doing this. Um, and then went back to my apartment and I fell asleep and slept through them coming to pick me up for practice. Um, Luckily, they knocked on the door really hard, and I was able to get there. But yeah, practicing was.
Welcome back to Gloves Off. I am Bill Reno, and I disappeared for a few weeks. I ran off to Hawaii, so hopefully I'm looking a little tanner. I don't know if it's possible, if you can tell. I went from like white to like a little off-white, picked up a little bit. But we're joined with 1999 World Cup winner Saskia Webber. And Saskia, we are in kind of the fun merry-go-round rosters, because I feel like we run into this every year where the season ends and one player's here, and then the next moment they're over there. But because that's happened, that's dominoed this, and then now this,
Right.
this. And so I think the big thing on everyone's mind is Kansas City.
Right. I mean, what you saw obviously like a week ago was this flood of like thank yous and everything like that, because it was on social media, because it was the end of the season rosters that had to be in. And so, I think you saw some surprises with Angel City. Didi Harchich is now gone. But now, just today, I mean, yesterday you saw Eddie Franch is gone from Kansas City, which, we're not that surprised about. But I think the biggest surprise for me today was Schultz. So Schultz is gone from Kansas City as well. So my mind is, does she want to go home? She's got the kids and everything like that. She came in, in all intents and purposes, saved Kansas City, because I've talked about it a lot when I was broadcasting, that Kansas City was in a place where they were just like, let me score more goals than you score against us in the beginning of the season,
Yeah.
which you can't survive on. And I thought Schultz did make a difference when she came in, and obviously stopped the bleeding in a sense. And listen, it's nothing on Eddie Franch. It has to do with defense and everything like that, But I think, and then they brought Laura Ivory in. So a lot happened in the past 24 hours with Kansas City, which is interesting. And other goalkeepers around the league. I mean, if you look, San Diego, is down to one goalkeeper. Obviously, I think rumor has it, like I don't know if I could spill who I think is going in. I think I'll keep zipped on that because I'm not 100% sure. And I think you're going to see, some young, like, I'll keep this under my hat. We were talking about this before we went live. There's some opportunities on different NWSL teams right now for these young college players, like All-Americans and stuff like that, that are being, they're being reached out to. And who do we develop? And we're seeing a changeover in the goalkeeper position, I think more so than we've seen in a long time. But again, that goes back to, in my opinion, you got to move on if you're not playing. And if you're sitting on the bench for so long, and like, I bring up Fallon Tullis-Joyce with that. You look at her. She was up in Seattle. She wasn't playing that much. She said, I'm going to get on a plane. I'm going to go to Manchester United. She sat behind Earps for a year, and now she starts for Manchester United, and now she's into the U.S. national team pool. So sometimes your best decision is to get out of town.
Well, I think that's the trick that everyone's trying to figure out, is like, where is the place that's going to invest into me, and that's also going to, like, you need one part, like, focus and investment, IDP and all that, but then you also obviously need the chance. You can train all you want, but if you're not going to get a proper chance, I feel like we saw some names in the Summer Cup, but it felt like it was more of like, well, we're going to give you a look, but then we're just going to go back to our starter, which I can kind of get, but I feel like a few more teams could have been a little bit more fair with taking a look at their goalkeeper situation. But
well, I even felt that at the last games of the season, a couple teams that I called that were out of playoff contention still didn't start their backups. And I was kind of a little bit like, what are you looking at right now? Like, first of all, reward these players for like day in and day out, like showing up and working their butts off, but also take a look at your future, put them in these games, and see what they do. You're out of playoff contention. Now is the time again. And show them, if you're going to sell them, because this is a business, like let's get them some playing time, which I don't think was done enough in the NWSL. And we'll talk about it with the USL, which stands out to me that you're seeing goalkeepers get playing time.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. No, I think like I think the two big like storylines I'm following mentally with like it's like one is, and you kind of hit on it real quick, is Ivory going to Kansas City, because I feel like she's hit this weird lull where she obviously got drafted. Rest in peace, the draft. But then immediately they go around and bring in Dickey from UNC, and now Ivory's kind of caught in the spot of like, well, what's my role here? And now she's coming into Kansas City, where like, is she a 2 or a 1? And everyone's going to say we're going to give her
with Schultz leaving. And she's coming in as technically as 1. First of all, you never come in as anything.
Oh, yeah.
Right, with a clean set, because I don't know who else they're going to bring in. There are going to be some other goalkeepers floating around. Are they going to turn around and bring in a Harajic, and say, you know what, she fits our style, let's bring her in and see, let her battle for the number 1. You don't know. There are goalkeepers out there floating around that have plenty of experience in the league.
Well, you never get brought in as something, but sometimes you get brought in not as something. And I think we've seen that with the goalkeeper. And they're like, well, you're definitely not the one. And I think Ivory kind of hits that weird line where it's like, okay, I could very well see them being like, yeah, she's not going to be the one. She can be 2. Or they could say, hey, like, we're going to give her a role here. She's gotten a little bit of time here and there. I don't think she's been amazing, but I don't think she's been awful, but also it's been kind of limited, and it depends on who they bring in. So that's my big one storyline. And then I think the other one, I'm just going to rattle off a few names that are kind of floating around that theoretically could slide back. You already mentioned Fallon over at Man U. I think that's probably a bit of a stretch as far as her.
I don't think Fallon should come back.
She seems settled. You could maybe see Caitlin Talbot, who's also in England. Actually, she's at Tottenham. You've got some other younger keepers. Shea Yanas, who's actually in the 2nd division there, has kind of been in the league a little bit in and out. Maybe not. Samantha Murphy, UNC alum, who's been in Sweden. So we've got a few keepers who kind of like were here at some point, or maybe they weren't, and then they've kind of left the public eye. And like, could they be brought in? So that's kind of my second thought of like, okay, who's going to get a chance? Who's going to get brought in? Who's going to come out from the woodwork of like, people are like, who is that? I didn't even know who that person was. That's kind of my second like storyline. I'm very curious to kind of track.
You have a Brisky,
as
well. So there's some ones floating around out there. I mean, look, Sweden. Where is she? No.
She's playing for Hungary's national team, right? But she's...
Yeah, I can't remember.
I'm
Sweden, I think. She's going to kill me because I just forgot that.
Yeah.
But I think that...
Yeah, Sweden. Yeah, Fitsko.
Yeah. I think it's interesting. I think if you have a couple American goalkeepers floating around that are getting nonstop playing time in Sweden, in England and stuff like that, I think you lean into, do I use an international spot or do I bring a U.S. player back? I think Fallon has a good argument. She might be getting wooed by people. She's starting at Manchester United right now.
Yep.
So it's like you're at the top. You're at one of the top teams. So it'd be one thing if you're in the 2nd division or if you're somewhere like that and you're not really. But she's like I would have wanted to play for Manchester United.
Yeah, I can turn it down.
That would have been a dream for me come true.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you'll see a Fallon come back, and if it does, it'd be a nice probably payday for her to come back. But we'll see. Like I said, I think I'd like to see Haracic land somewhere. I don't know. We'll see. I mean, there's crazy things going out. Lynn Williams is going to Seattle. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't see that coming. And then I was like, well, she wants to be back on the West Coast, she said. I was like, yeah, but you're in Seattle. You know, you're from Southern Cal, right? So I'm like,
terribly close. Yeah. No, certainly very interesting to see what kind of goes forward. But we're in early days of the off season, so still a lot to happen.
Well, we say it's the early days, but truly by January 1st, you want that preseason roster in.
That's true. No, completely true. To shift gears, I was going to say like rewind the clock, but actually this is pretty recent news as well. But we have had our first, I was going to say first goalkeeper from the women's national team in the Hall of Fame in a while, but actually that's not true. We've had 3 in the last 10 or so years,
which is ridiculous.
Which is awesome to see. Mary Harvey, the 1991 World Cup winner. You told, like, when you say like legend, I think legend can mean a lot of things for a lot of different people, but I think in this case, I think we're all in agreement it's fitting. But if you're not as familiar with Harvey's game, she was the goalkeeper for the 1991 World Cup, where the U.S. won in China, and I think the 91 team,
and she won a gold medal. She was second in the gold medal in the Atlanta Olympics. So.
Yeah. And so I feel like that like really pre-99 team, like a lot of times just gets overlooked and it's
100%.
And the being the first of something, especially in women's soccer, is like really mind blowing to me, because when you look at like where the landscape was, and you can definitely speak a ton on this, Sauce, but you look where the landscape was, like Harvey's journey in a large sense is just almost exclusively driven by passion when it came to the sport of like, hey, I love doing this. There wasn't a massive payday, obviously, where the national team was at the time, but also the pro game as well. She kept playing. She wasn't doing it for the money, you know? And so I think it's an awesome thing where she can say she was first. No one can ever take that away from her. And then she also sets the standard going forward. So you've crossed over a little bit with her. So you tell us a bit about Harvey's, you know, like I think we've read the bios and all, but give us a little bit of color and detail here of kind of your.
Well, first of all, congrats, Harv. And it's ridiculously overdue. It's kind of grossly overdue. And it goes back to just my personal feelings about the Hall of Fame. Like, and Nick Rimondo's going in at the same time, and hats off to Nick Rimondo, but are you kidding me right now? Like, are you kidding me? Like, what have you won? I'm sorry, great goalkeeper, not taking that away from Nick whatsoever. But you go in the same class as Mary Harvey, who was a pioneer, who won the World Cup and everything, and it took this long to put Mary Harvey in, but you put Nick Rimondo in. I'm like, that's a slap in the face to me. Absolutely slap in the face. Like, why don't you let Nick wait 30 years? I'm sorry, but that's what you're telling me. You're telling me his history is equal to that of Mary Harvey's? No, sit on the bench for 30 years and wait your turn then, because that's ridiculous to me. I think it's bullshit. I'm sorry. Maybe I get a tag for saying the S word, but that's ridiculous, and I think it's a slap in the face. Now,
let me throw one thing in there, because I don't know if did you see the video when Harvey got when she was told, like, hey,
I didn't see that one. No,
it's very sweet. But one of her, it wasn't the first thing she said, but one of the first things she said was something like, oh, they let people into the Hall of Fame with only like 20 something caps or something like that. And like, for me, it kind of like bummed me out. But it's like, man, like, you are disparaging your own accomplishments. And it was kind of a little jokey, but at the same moment, I'm like, Nick Rimondo saying that, like, oh, like, from him, it's like, oh, awesome, I'm getting in. Like,
well, that's hard. I think, but I think that we've talked about this. I think you have to go back to the amount of games. Like, if you're going back to like play goalkeepers from that time, the amount of games that the U.S. team and that you played in a year were none. Like, you played one tournament. The World Cup was obviously every 4 years. We weren't in the Olympics till 96, like, you know, and you're talking not that many games. So it wasn't like you're playing like She Believes Cup and, you know, and this and that and the other, you know, so there were only so many games to play in a year. And usually the starter got them. And if the backups did, they split the game. And you've even seen that with like, that's why when we were going over last time we talked, I was like, oh, really? I'm like sixth. Like, you know what I mean? Like, that just tells you we didn't play that much. Now, as far as, you know, my feelings on Nick Romano, I think it's ridiculous. I think he should, like, at some point, I guess, should be in the Hall of Fame. But I think to put him in the same class as Mary Harvey is a slap in the face to women's goalkeeping. And I think it's ridiculous. And it's ridiculous it took them this long to put Harvey in the Hall of Fame.
Well, and not to take anything away from her, but it did feel like, because of all the off-field stuff she's done, which is awesome. There's a lot of
exactly, like, yes.
Yeah, the Hall of Fame had a really nice write-up, which was super insightful for me, of like all the twists and turns in her career and the details. That it was awesome to read. Highly recommend it.
But do you have to do off-field stuff to get into the Hall of Fame as a woman? Like, let's list Nick's off-field stuff compared to 30 years of Mary Harvey's off-field. But do you have to have that? Like, if a goalkeeper right now, Matt Turner won the World Cup, he'd go in the Hall of Fame in 4 years.
Right, but he'd probably go ahead and put him in the next day after. Yeah.
Exactly. Well, I've already said they'd build a wing to the men's team, and it'd be ridiculous. Yeah. And everybody on the team would be in the Hall of Fame. So you know how I feel about the Hall of Fame. Now, fast forwarding to Harvey. Harvey was incredibly professional. And for me, coming into the national team and being around somebody that everything she did was just on the field, off the field, was hold herself at such a high standard professionally, was something that I really respected and I put into my on the off the field game. I think that athletically, she wasn't the most gifted goalkeeper. And she would make up for that with technically the way she would play. She was very, very focused on her technical skills, her reading and understanding of the game. So that taught me a lot of stuff. I couldn't rely on my athleticism anymore, you know. And basically what happened was Brian and I came in. And so Brian and I were very different goalkeepers than Harv was. And I think that I think in the middle of Bri, like, ridiculously athletic. Harv, I'm sorry, I love you, Harv, but Harv not as athletic, but incredibly technically sound, and tactically sound. And then I was somewhere in the middle, where I was very athletic, and I felt like I fell in between that. Yeah. And I learned a lot from Harvey for one side of it, and obviously he had to keep up with Bri athletically on the other side of it. And that's not taking away saying Bri wasn't technical or tactical. I mean, we all were to be in that position, but Harv, just what she lacked in a certain amount of athleticism, she made up above and beyond in that. She was intense, like super intense to be around. And a very, like, I mean, there's stories, but they're kind of more personal stories. Like, I wouldn't say that. I think Brian and I, the way we trained was very similar than the way Harv trained. And I think that Brian and I, like, we were very, like, head down focused, like, do our drills. If somebody pulled something out of the upper 90, you were just like, awesome, great save. But you're doing your business. And I think Harv was more like, I felt at times more of a, like, great job. And I'm like, well, I'm not going to, you're picking up a back pass. Like, well, when you could pick up back pass, I'm not going to say great job. Like, there's no reason, you know, I'm here to support you, but I'm also here to focus. But like I said, I mean, she taught me a lot professionally and technically and tactically, and then off the field, I mean, she was genius as well. And then went on just to do so many things for US Soccer and everything after her soccer career ended, you know. But she, winning the 91 World Cup, and then you look at who else, you know, you have like your Kim Wyants, your Amy Almonds, your Kim Maslins and all that. And it was a different breed of goalkeeper back then. It really was.
Yeah, can you maybe give me a little more depth so I can understand? But you mentioned the professionalism in that time. I feel like it would be easy to not be as professional, considering the lack of investment resources that were going into the national team and the women's game at the time. So how did, whether you're specifically or in a general sense, like how did Mary Harvey's professionalism kind of clash with what would I guess be kind of an amateur approach or not professional? Like what?
No, it was the way we were treated was crap.
You're like, wow, that's cool that she's doing that. Like that really stands out.
Well, but I think the whole team. But I think coming into the national team at that time, they held themselves to that professional standard, even though they weren't treated that way. And even though we weren't treated that way. So just because you're not treated that way doesn't mean that that's not how you carry yourself. And, Harvey played overseas. Like she just knew how things were supposed to be. And she was one of the advocates for, no, we're not being treated right. No, this isn't okay. No, so like, you don't have to hold yourself as the bad news bears just because you're being looked at, like treated like nothing and staying in roach motels and stuff like that. You can expect more and hold yourself to a higher standard. And, I got brought in understanding that. And I think also on the other side of it, really learning this game of soccer, as a goalkeeper, reading the game, understanding things and stuff, like she just tactically just understood it. And that taught me a lot playing with her.
Yeah. Very cool. Very cool.
Yeah.
I want to read a couple lines from the write-up to the Hall of Fame, which again, very, very cool to read. And they did a good job of like kind of connecting some of the spots. Cause when you look at Wikipedia, you're always some info. So some of these things just really are almost kind of laughable to me. So she said something about how when she went to Germany in 1988, which is crazy to think about. She went to Germany in 1988, happened to just find some team because when she went over there, it was just for work. Like she was like moving on from soccer. She goes there, massive soccer culture. So she gets in on the team, starts playing. And she said, I had to listen to all kinds of abuse. They would ask, how can you be a good player? You're from the US, which is really funny to think now of like someone asking like an American player on the women's side, like, how can you be a good player? So that's very cool. And then in 1990, she joined, previously she had joined FSV Frankfurt, and they beat Bayern Munich 1-0 in front of 75,000 people, which is awesome. She said, she basically kind of alluded to like going to work and then going to play, and how those were separate lives, and that didn't really cross over. And she said, I blew my cover because I saved a penalty 2 minutes before the end of the game, and it was on national television. That resulted in some questions on Monday at work, which is awesome to see. So, yeah, very, very cool. And of course, outside off the field, I didn't know that she was involved with establishing the U17 Women's World Cup. There's a men's U17 World Cup, but she was involved with that, which is very cool to see. She's done a lot of human rights stuff. And again, I think it's right to praise her for all the stuff she's done off the field.
It just took 30 years.
Yeah, it just took 30 years.
That's ridiculous. So, I mean, I like it. Hall of Fame, you should have your head in the sand. You should just go and hide, in my opinion. Like you make yourself look dumber and dumber. I'm never getting in the Hall of Fame because I talk this way, but I mean, look, a first Black goalkeeper on the U.S. getting in the Hall of Fame, no matter what I do for soccer, like that, probably because I'm just like head in the sand. You should be ashamed of yourself that it took this long. And that goes for a lot of other players out there. I'm sorry.
Well, maybe 30 more years of off field. Yeah. So, well, at the end of the day, we're quick to celebrate Mary Harvey.
Congrats, Harv.
Pioneer, one of the early ones, which is awesome. And I don't have a great transition because this almost feels like a complete departure of kind of everything we've talked about. But I've been wanting to kind of dive into the 2007 World Cup debacle. And so I had planned all this. Like I had finished reading Scurry's biography. I went and watched the Untold Hope Solo hour-long episode. I think it's on Netflix. And I kind of built all stuff. And then in the last week, or last week or so, like things come out, I'm like, oh, okay, well, so we're going to move forward with this. And because I wanted to get your thoughts on a few things. So kind of what I want to do is like, I want to walk through the lead in, because I do think there is some interesting stuff that came out from the biography and also the episode, which you made some brief appearances in, which was fun.
Heard.
I like rewound it and told my spouse, I was like, hey, look, like that's
there's Saskia. There you are. There you are.
But and then I want to go through the goals, because we're here.
Of the Brazil game?
Yeah, and then just talk briefly about the aftermath. And so I don't want to do like a complete dive on either goalkeeper, but I would say this is probably one of the more headline moments, and certainly women's goalkeeping, but also like specifically American goalkeeping. A lot of buzz, a lot of hot takes and stuff. So I'm going to do this chronologically, and we're going to walk through this. So there's probably the starting point here in this is that Scurry had been away with the team for a little bit, and she comes back in 05-06. And going into that, the head coach at the time, Greg Ryan, essentially tells Scurry, hey, Hope's my goalkeeper. And I'm like, Scurry wrote about how uncomfortable that made her and kind of was confused why he would even say it to her. Fast forward to right before the World Cup, Hope Solo's father passes. Hope has been the established number one for some time now. And so she actually leaves for some time in this gap. And I didn't know this until I read the biography, that Scurry played some games, and she actually, in one of those games, she beat Brazil 2-0, which would kind of play forward here. So the World Cup kicks off. Not a great start for Solo. They tie North Korea 2-2. It's a pretty bad goal on the opening goal for Solo, but they ended up getting the tie. They advance out of the group. Solo has played every game. Scurry writes in her book about how there's these little things going on that, even though she didn't know at the time, it came out later, but Solo was clearly struggling to some extent or another. But also Solo had been missing like a mandatory team dinner. She'd blown a curfew before the England quarterfinal. And so inside the camp, I think it sounds like they're struggling a bit, because Scurry also wrote about how they did have a very a close moment, her and Solo, about losing their father. So Scurry had already lost her father at this point. Mm-hmm. And so you have this kind of lead up of like, there is some tension before this point, but I think it's more life as opposed to animosity is kind of how I've heard both of their stories at this point. But as most of us know, Greg Ryan makes this big decision, which has been universally agreed upon as an awful decision. They go final game, and he switches his goalkeepers. And at this point, Scurry is 12-0 all time against Brazil, has never lost against Brazil, had won just back in July before this. And of course, Hope is livid about this and does not take it well. I think at this point, I'd be really curious to hear your thoughts on this. But I think as I'm reading and hearing from the documentary, the two tales, which line up fairly accurate. I mean, Hope has not really shied away from a lot of this. I think what struck out to me is the national team is notoriously known for being this like competitive cauldron that Anson Torrens brings in, and you have this high intensity, but it seems like in this specific situation, some toxicity brews very, very quickly, and you have this like Solo camp and you have the Scurry camp, and it sounds like sides aren't talking to each other. It sounds like Scurry and Solo aren't having good communication. It sounds like there's a lot of fractures. So you look back and kind of paint a picture for me. How do you navigate something that's supposed to be as intensely competitive, especially between goalkeepers, but how do you avoid the problematic, toxic moments that we'll kind of dive a little bit more into here with Solo and Scurry?
Well, first of all, it's not Bry's fault that was the choice. You're there for when you're called on to play. And all, in my opinion, the toxicity of the Scurry camp or Solo camp just splintered the team. And that was apparent in the Brazil game. Yeah. And it was apparent in the way Solo was acting on the bench. I mean, we saw it over and over again, like her just pissed, her sitting there, like that kind of energy. Look, again, if your Ryan calls on you, what are you going to say? You know what? I think Hope's to play. You know what I mean? that's the decision. That's the decision. And you have to support your team in that. You know, it's telling Shannon McMillan, okay, you know what, Mia, I'm going to start Shannon in this. What is Mia going to do? Just sit there pissed off? Or is she going to say, when I get my time, I'm going to go and I make a difference. I'm going to carry the water, which is it's we before me, you know, and that was lost. And we don't know totally what was going on behind scenes. Look, you're missing. Why are you missing curfew? Well, I don't know why you're missing curfew, but I know why you got kicked off the national team. So why are you missing curfew? And if that has something to do with your father and stuff like that, then that was discussed. I'm sure that was discussed behind closed doors. Why are you missing meetings? Like, what is going on? And I don't know. I can't speak to that, whether it was like, I'm going to punish Hope. Like, it's a hard line. Like, you're saying, okay, because she's the starter and because she's played, regardless of what you do, go be a knucklehead and do all this stuff, I'm still going to play you. So what kind of precedence does that stand as well? If that had nothing to do with it, and it was just, look, Bri has a really good record against Brazil, and I feel right now comfortable playing Bri against Brazil. That's my choice as a coach. Well, your decision as a teammate is to support your team, is to support Bri, is to cheer her on, is to bring a positive environment, and it's not about you. You know what I mean? Now, was it the wrong decision? You know, and I know Hope afterwards was like, I would have made those saves.
All right, well, don't go too positive.
Okay.
But we'll get to it. You're on a good run there. I do think it was a bit again, I'm trying to stay in that order here. Like, you've got a bit of a perfect storm brewing, because I've not read one thing in defense of Greg Ryan for this decision. Like, everyone has been, like, everything you just said I think has been mostly pretty agreeable by all camps.
Well, wait. If you take everything else out of the scenario, okay? If you take missing curfew, if that had nothing to do with it,
just like just goalkeepers, yeah.
If it's just playing in the World Cup, then no, I think Solo should have played. I don't think you should have made the change. And regardless of Bri's track record against Brazil, you know, that game, you don't know who did play in that game, who didn't play in that game. Was that Brazil full strength? Like, what were the situations? It's not the same as a World Cup. If Hope is playing fine, if she's rolling, if everything's great, why change your keeper? Like, don't mess with it if it's not broken. So no, I don't agree with the change. If everything was copacetic and going fine, but again, if things were amiss behind the scenes, and if things were going a little, if that played into your decision, then that played into your decision.
Well, and I think this is one of the things that has been tough. Like I said, there's been mostly agreement from both sides, which has been very interesting. But of the few things that there have been disagreement about, from Solo, she said, and I have to double check, but she said for sure players went to Ryan to basically push for Scurry to play. And the way Scurry phrased it was more of like, hey, players want me to get some minutes, so I'll be ready. And I think that was a bit of the tension there, where clearly there's some, again, you've got these two camps here. And I think this is something that I don't want to do a review on the documentary, but it was very funny how they pointed out how many players dodged the request to speak on it. You do have Michelle Akers, which love Michelle Akers, loving her talk, but you have a lot of people who were there that have been very quiet since about the whole thing, which, like, yeah, it was nice to read about Scurry writing about it and just being honest about it. Something she said, which this will lead into the game well here.
But first of all, that doesn't make any sense to me to say, look, I love Bri, and I don't think that makes any sense to me to say, people want me to play, so I get minutes, so I'm ready. I'm sorry. Did I go up to Tony and say that during the 99 World Cup? Like, hey, by the way, we're playing Germany, and the team wants me to get minutes, so I'm ready. If I'm not ready at the World Cup to step in as the number 2 goalkeeper, that's not your position. And as a coach, I'd be like, well, guys, you're not getting ready here, you should be ready there. So I don't agree with that at all. And that, I'm sure Bri wouldn't have been happy if she found out I was like banging on coach's door during 9-1 saying, everybody wants me to get some time in, so I'm ready. Guess what I did? I flew to Mexico City and played for the U20s right before the 99 World Cup. So I had games in, so I was ready in case I was called upon during the 99 World Cup. I didn't ask during the 99 World Cup. Like, if you're not ready, by then you're not getting ready.
Yeah.
So
well,
I'm sorry.
I think if I'm gonna just based off Scurry's own writing, and again, I'm trying to stay. I don't want to do like a book review, but
I'm also, it's gloves off, right?
Yeah. But I think the confusion I got a little bit was, on one hand, Bri has been put in a situation where she's not asking her teammates to go do that. So like I can kind of understand, and like you said about the coach calls your name, what are you going to do? You're going to say no? Like, so she's kind of put in a tough spot. But on the same token, it seems like her communication track or communication pathways with not only Solo but just the team as a whole feel very, very fractured. And I think part of that is also a product of Greg Ryan as well, because even in Scurry's book, there's a number of quotes in there from even other players about how the locker room was kind of lost at halftime in the game. And so again, this perfect storm, but I think that's the one thing I look back and I would love to hear from both sides of like, hey, did y'all talk? what were, and maybe they tried to, and they didn't. Neither gave the sense that like, well, I tried to talk to them and they shut me down. There was none of that from either side. It sounds like you've got two very confident and two very different people who are coming at this from two totally different ways, and things happen to kind of build up and explode. But it seems like communication was not, readily available.
No, it seems like, I think at the time for me, and for watching it from afar, watching it go down, and I think talking to other teammates, 99ers of mine at that time, was where was the leadership in all of this? Yep. And I remember at that time going, like, and we'll get to it, but there's no way that we would ever publicly have come out, no matter how you feel, and say anything about a player. And if there was a problem, Foudy would have handled it, and Carla, and we would have all sat down, and Michelle and everybody, and we would have talked and we would have figured this out. And the fact that splinter and that disjointedness was alive in that team goes from the top down and from your leaders down and everything like that. It should have never been that should have never been there. And I can't imagine I never was around something like that with the 99ers, even 95, 96. Like, I've never been around a team splintered and disjointed like that they're two camps. You know what I mean? Like that's a foreign concept to me, especially with the U.S. national team.
I was going to say, especially for that team. Yeah. I think this would be the perfect scenario for people to be like, look, I mean, that was 15 plus years ago. Like, let's just like put things straight. Let's just put it to bed here with like actual information, because all we have right now is Scurry's book, what Solo has said, but then everyone else has really dodged the issue, where it's just like,
well, everybody's moved on and nobody wants to talk about it. Like, like I'd love to hear what Lil has to say. She was a captain. I'd love to see what Christy Rampone has to say. Like, they were the leaders, like in the dressing room. Like, what do you mean it was splintered? Do I care? I don't. Do you know what I mean? Like,
I'm just curious. Like,
I'm like, if you like, I mean, look, apparently Hope needs to, put out a documentary on Netflix, and apparently Brian needed to talk about it in her book. That opens the door to talk about it and stuff like that. I wasn't there, but I do have my opinions from the things I've heard and everything, and the things I saw, and it was unacceptable and embarrassing.
All right, well, hold there. All right, so we're gonna get there. All right, so let's go through the goals real quick.
Okay.
I have looked for like quality video. The video I'm gonna play is from Fox, and it's good quality. The camera work isn't the best, but also for whatever reason they put the goals out of order. So this is the goals here. So they did a little thing before I forget which World Cup this is, but they did like a top 50 moments. It was kind of a cool little thing. But obviously this is one of them. So they kind of spin it a little bit as like, oh, Marta, but really the story is not is not Marta here. So I'm going to jump to the goals because they're all out of her. So here's the first goal. The U.S. goes down 2-0 at half with a red card. So they're down a person. But this is the opening goal. And I think they're going to go quick here. So I'll try to work around this. But this is one of those where when you see this goal, it seems like, oh man, like y'all are not on the same page. Like,
well,
and this
is it's communication. That ball should have just Bry should have just been able to eat this up, and it's just communication. And this goes to, is there a disconnect because you haven't been playing together? So is there a timing issue? Is there like a lack of communication here and everything like that? And that's what it looks like to me. Like this should be Bry's ball. Yeah. And that's the bottom line. Yeah. And I think this is every coach's nightmare when it comes to change the goalkeeper, that something awkward like this happens where it's like, oh, y'all don't. But I'm gonna tell you, I remember the feeling. And you felt this sense of this is going downhill. Yeah. And when watching the game, I felt incredibly bad for Bry because of all the drama around it. And I'm sorry, I don't know if the clips are in here, but watching, Hope's face on the bench and knowing the type of atmosphere that created on the bench and everything, and they kept panning to her, and just you could feel it from here, from the US, and you just felt like it was just like, this isn't going to go well, because you could feel the energy from the team going, like, it was like almost just like the two splintered groups, like, see, I told you so type of thing, instead of, okay, guys, we got to squash everything and we got to win this game. Let's all come together. So go ahead.
I told you so later, but yeah, right now. Yeah. So I get that it was in some sense great TV, because it was, again, one of the more dramatic things within the national team, goes for all the wrong reasons. However, like you're saying, it was kind of feeding in the wrong direction. It just kept going. So they're down 1-0. The U.S. ended up losing this game 4-0. But the second goal, again, this is out of order here. The second goal, I don't think there's a deflection here. But basically we've got some lateral movement from the top of the 18. You've got a little bit of a runner here. It might get tapped. I don't know, but you can tell she gets a palm on it. But I think all the movement here, and I'll play it in real time here because
play it in real time.
Yeah. It's something that, it's a bit of a soft goal. I think we can all look at that and say that. I think the first goal is kind of like a bit comical for me, for Solo to be like, why would have saved it? It's like, that's not like a shot. That's like things have gone.
It's an own goal deflection. Yeah. I mean, the argument Solo can make is that we would have been on the same page and the communication would have been, but you don't know. Here, I think that is that Piercy. I think that is that Rampone.
Maybe, I can't tell.
I think, it looks like it. I think that their far post is covered. I think she's only going near post, and I think that Bry knows she should make the save. Now, if Solo wants to say she would have made the save, look, you can always say that, but then there could have been other saves that Bry made that you wouldn't have made, so you don't know, right? But I think the biggest thing that comes back to this is the atmosphere around the team. It was a head down, losing atmosphere, and you helped create that. So I'm sorry, but that's just as dysfunctional as bad saves. Yeah. So, it's just as toxic. So it's more toxic. So I'm sorry. I just don't agree with it. So yes, I think that this is by far, and I'm sure Bry will tell you, not the greatest game she's ever had in her life.
Well, no, she's been pretty open about that. But I think this is a perfect game to help people zoom out a bit, because we can look at the goal and actually looking at the replay again. I think she actually does get deflected, but you look exclusively at just the moments on the field, you might come to some conclusion, but when you zoom out any amount, even just a little bit, and you think about well, this was happening, and the first goal was this, but also the team stuff, and then this is that, these sort of moments start to make a lot more sense. Mm-hmm. And it starts to oh, actually.
You look at and you say, they're not playing as a team. Defensively, they're disjointed defensively. Even on the last goal, you had pressure cover. You didn't really have pressure cover balance properly. I think that I think there should have been better pressure on the ball. It's not a difficult shot from the top of the box. Let her have that shot 99% of the time. Bry has that save, but at the second time, if that was Piercy, I'm not sure who that was, but why are you so deep? So you even allow that runner to kind of screen Bry and everything. Like, why is that run so deep in the box? So we can pick apart the defense here as well, but I think that comes down to the team just not being together playing. So just let them play, else we're going to be here for hours. This is, I think, in today's game, I think Bry's in no man's land in this. I think she comes out, she has to set. Okay, this goes back to old school. Like, don't keep coming because you're going to get the ball passed by you as well. She comes out, she makes herself big, but your distance from the player is so much right now that the goal is too big behind you, and she just tucks it in away. Bry's got to close space faster, so she's at about 3 yards closer to the player. She's too far here, right? So her timing coming off her line on this is way too slow, and everything again disjointed. Where's the defense?
Yeah.
Where's the organization? So.
Yeah, I'd have to go through the full game, which is actually on YouTube, but that's a very odd setup here. Like, why is she there with the ball? What has happened here? So absolutely, I think the fourth goal, it's probably like maybe not only the goal, a century-minute goal ever. I don't know. This is a wild goal to see from Marta. Who else? But she embarrasses our entire team here. And again, it's just kind of a mess. It kind of goes through Scurry a bit, but also it's 3-0. They're down a person. The game's kind of winding down.
Everybody's getting beat here.
Everyone's going to roll. I mean, like, from an objective standpoint, that's an awesome goal. I think
it is, but you've got no cover and balance on Marta. She does the flick one. It's a gorgeous goal by Marta, but she just destroyed our defense. And then Bry, heels back, waits not forward. She's on her heels. She gets beat. The ball goes under her. So it's just, I'm sure nobody wants to talk about because everybody wants to forget it.
Yeah.
I want to forget it.
Well, yeah. And I think this game is actually a great example to completely put the technique and tactics, not maybe all the way off to the side, but pretty far off the side, and really look at the real core of the problem here. Like, what is that seed? It's not, she didn't find her set position. Like, that is not the issue here. Like, there are things way, way more important here.
And I think you see here and that's why I said, watching that game, I remember the feeling of watching that game and knowing all the drama that was going on, and just watching it was the energy, and the team was splintered and disjointed. The defense out of position, to Bry letting up soft goals for Bry's talent, and and Marta having a heyday like that. It was the perfect storm in a sense.
Truly, yeah. It's not just one thing that's gone wrong; it's a lot. So. After the game, which is the thing I've paused you on quite now, but we'll get to. So I've got the full quote here, or most of the quote is the start of it. Someone doing their job asked Solo, what they thought of the decision. She says it was a wrong decision, and I think anybody that knows anything about the game knows that. There's no doubt in my mind I would have made those saves. And the fact of the matter is that it's not 2004 anymore. The last things here, I'll let you roll on this, but the last things here moving forward is Solo was removed from the team after, in the documentary, she said how they took the whole team and put them in a circle, and they all sat down and they just went around the circle, or whoever wanted to talk, and just list out all the awful things that they did not like about. So I don't know. I mean, I'd be curious to hear from the other side, because Scurry does not mention this in the book directly. She does mention a couple points of some dialogue, but even that was kind of summed up with something of like someone saying, how the F could you have done that, and storming out of the room. Like, there's clearly both sides in agreement that people are upset, and even Solo has come out afterwards pretty immediately saying that, like, she wasn't trying to target Scurry. I don't know how you couldn't feel that is at least somewhat targeted, and I think she kind of knows that, but it sounds like her frustration had boiled to such a high level that she's just like kind of scorched earth, like whatever, I'm going to say what I want and roll over.
Mm-hmm.
And then, things are pushing back against her. So she gets removed from the team. She's not with them for the third place game. She doesn't travel home with the team.
Mm-hmm.
Afterwards, I mean, like I said, not much comes out about that. I think the main things, one, again, as the book, but also when she was suspended, again, not doing a total breakdown of Sol as a person, but when she was suspended, Abby Wambach made a comment of how this is a lifetime achievement award. So I guess I'm curious on your end of how do you feel, what should have happened? I think we're all in agreement.
I'll tell you exactly what should have happened.
Yeah.
Number one, Solo should have never been allowed to speak to anybody after that game. And whether, I don't care if Aaron Heifetz media was like, we want, no. You bring that team into the locker room, you say, look, we're all upset about this. We all are, on different pages about this. Nobody's talking to the media except our captains. That's it. All you got to do is say no, right? Because obviously she's fired up. So whether she was in the step and repeat, she was right there. So she got brought out there. I know how it works. Aaron Heifetz was like, the media wants to talk to you. The answer's no, not right now. You could talk to her tomorrow or something like that. Bring your team together, captains, talk to them, say nobody's talking to the press right now because we're all so pissed off. We're all so volatile against each other. The captains will go out and do the media, and they'll talk to them, say, we're upset. We need to come together as a team, refocus so we can win the third place and stuff like that. She should have never been allowed to, in my opinion, right? And on top of that, what you said was so not on par for this crest and these 4 stars on my hat whatsoever. And it doesn't represent the shoulders that you stood on to be where you are. And that is how I felt about it. That is how my other teammates that we talked to, when it happened, felt about it. We're like, not in our house, not on our time. We are a team. We stand united even in defeat. Have some pride and realize that it's not about you. It's we, not me.
Well, let me ask you
this.
And
that was disrespectful to everything we played for. So I'm sorry, and you could come at me, and I've made my mistakes and stuff like that, but I've always been a teammate.
Well, I think this is one thing, again, I think outside looking in, people can really miss the importance of like the collective whole. And that was something Scurry made very, very clear in her book. And I think just in general, you talk to anyone with the national team, a high priority on the collective whole. Whereas on the men's side, not that that's not important, but like it's not anywhere near the same level. It's totally different. But I think
look at the Gio Reno debacle.
Yeah,
so.
Yeah, good example. we go an hour on that. I think,
but how can you? Obviously there are a lot of people with opinions about that, and he got punished for that. He apologized, but how can you be like?
That wasn't even him. Yeah,
But how can you be like on a fence about like? If I'm sorry, I'd love to meet people that say, "Oh, she had every right to say what she said, and she had every right to treat the team."
So I think everyone's in agreement, and even Sola herself, from what I've gotten from her, just from hearing it, is that
I'm not sitting here to bash Solo. Look, she goes down as the greatest goalkeeper on the U.S. national team. I will say that. I will. I think Bri and her are right there neck and neck. I think I'm not arguing about her skills as a goalkeeper, what she's brought to the U.S. national team, but what she's also taken away from the U.S. national team at the same time, which is why she got suspended and eventually never brought back. And she has to deal with that. I'm sorry.
No, there's a lot we could say about Jose. So, but the defense has come up a little bit with her, and supporters of her have said something like, well, if a ban had said this, it would have been handled differently, which I do think there's something true about that. That does put a weird kind of like coding on like, well, it really wasn't that bad, which that kind of bothers me. It's like, okay, well, just because someone else is doing something, that doesn't really add up. Like, I think, like, let's just call it a spade. Like that, like you shouldn't have said
it doesn't work. It's just because they do something doesn't make it right. And the whole thing is again, I go back to the fact we've always held ourselves to the highest standard in the world, and like have respect for the shoulders that you stand on, and like come on. And so no, that doesn't wash with me. Oh, well, if so-and-so said that, he's a man. I'm like, well, okay. Like,
yeah. Now, I think the one thing I do struggle with all this was the aftermath, because we can talk all day about how messed up this was, and I think we're all in agreement.
Yeah, and Ryan made a mistake. That's the bottom line. Like, I love you, Brian. I love the U.S. national team and everything. She should have played. Like there's in my opinion no reason, if it ain't broke. But again, I don't know what was going on backstage. You don't know what was going on behind closed doors, and if that had a factor into the team being like, you are missing meetings, you are out. I don't know what she was doing while she wasn't in at curfew. I don't know any of that. But if that was a factor, then say it was a factor.
Yeah. Well, and again, that's where I'd like to have people come out and be like, okay, hey, look, this is what really happened. What's the harm? I mean, like, look, we passed it. Like, let's
lay it out there. What's the truth?
Yeah. But I think I struggle with, you've got someone who clearly is important to the team from an on-field success standpoint, and it seems like the aftermath did not help as far as bringing her back to the fold. Now, like, is there punishment that should be laid out? Absolutely. Is there things that you should handle? But it seems
but Hope's suspensions, and she's got to own this too. Listen,
not even the suspension. I'm just talking about like the World Cup run. Like, that seems like removing her from the team, the hotel, her travel. Like, you've just thrown someone so far away where it's
that's that. I think, again, we're going off what we know. Okay. And if you just go off what we know, then I think that's excessive. But we're not. Like, I don't know. Like, how many meetings did she miss? How many curfews did she miss? Like, was this a snowball going downhill and finally that's it? You're not a team player.
We'll go hypothetical here, and we'll kind of wrap up on this. But you tell me, say hypothetical, we've got random player, whatever their name is, and they're not really buying in. And you've got this competitive cauldron, you've got this high performing team, and they're not buying in, but they're also very talented. Barring extreme scenarios like murder or something, like, you think there's this kind of constantly, what is the pathway, or what needs to be happening to kind of bridge that gap? I mean, I'm sure you've seen something like that. Like, how do you bridge that gap into someone who's talented, but is maybe only bought in 85%?
Well, I mean, I think the opportunities were there. And I think that even if we go past this World Cup, again, I don't know behind the scenes, so I don't know. I'm sure there was more involved. I think there was more involved to the reason she got sent home without the team, and that she wasn't a part of the third place game. I think it's more than just the comments. That is my hypothetical. That is my guess. And if that's the case, then yeah, you're not dressing. Do I think you send her home separately? No, I think you don't dress. You have a third keeper there, so you don't dress, and that's your punishment. And Bry plays in the third place game, or maybe whoever was the third goalkeeper, I can't remember at this time, plays in the third place game, and that's what it is, and so that's your punishment. I think that's enough. Now, fast forward and moving forward on that, do I think that this can go both ways? Do I think that if a man did some of the things that Hope did, would they have gotten a second chance? I don't know. But if this is the argument you're going to bring up, I mean, you really kind of push the limits to the point that that's what, and there's certain things in the documentary I've heard, and I haven't seen the whole thing, but I do know aren't brought up in the documentary for other reasons. She got suspended after the World Cup. So own that as well. You know what I mean? I'll call a spade. Own the drunk driving in the team van here in LA with your husband. Like, talk about that as well. Don't put everything on the world against this. You got to own your mistakes. I own my mistakes when I was playing and stuff like that. And then on the field and off the field, you got to own it. If you're gonna make a documentary, tell the truth. So I mean, we can leave it at that. So
no, I think to close on that, I think,
and I'm sure I'm gonna get blasted for some of this stuff. It's public knowledge, so
No, look, everyone wants to run at you. There's nothing to run at you for. I will say, I mean, it's an hour-long documentary, and the one major complaint I had two major complaints. One, what you just said, they don't go.
Yeah, a lot of people have come to me and said that was a disappointing thing. They liked hearing about her side of things, but they also know that there was a lot left out that is like, come on, you know.
So the second thing that really annoyed me is Amy Allman is in it, and they don't mention that she was a former goalkeeper. They just present her as Hope's former goalkeeper coach. That was really annoying. It was like, well, she also
was the
played.
U.S. national team goalkeeper.
I was like, I don't like why is this not like? I mean, I love everything she said there was great and it was awesome. But I was like, I think you've kind of mispresented that.
And I will leave you with this. When a lot of things were going down off the field, I was asked by an unnamed friend and teammate to reach out, and I reached out to Hope to talk to her to see how she was doing, if she wanted, like, you know, going through my own battles with stuff and to see she needed to talk. I never heard from her. So whether she never got the message or whatever, but I got the number and I reached out because I was asked to. And so to say people didn't try, like, I know I did.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Would you, if they had asked you on the documentary, would you have gone on it?
There's no reason for me to go on it. I mean, I'm not I mean, I can have my opinions like I do right now, but I'm in it.
Yeah.
You know, but honestly, my answer would be like, why? I mean, I reached out, I was never called back, and I don't know what happened behind the scenes. Yeah. So I'm telling you this from all I know, from what you know and stuff like that. So, and what I've talked about with my other teammates that maybe have a little more insight, but
it was a little odd hearing Akers on it because I love hearing Akers talk. I love just how she views the world, but a lot of it was kind of like, well, I kind of knew her, you know, like she wasn't there for, you know, like she's, but anyways, well, no, like that is something that I've been wanting to talk about for a while and just finding the right platform and the right moment. So I apologize to Mary Harvey again for tagging on here.
Yeah, right. I'm like, this could have just all been about Harv and her amazing career. And listen, Nick Raimondo, I've been a fan of yours forever and stuff like that. I just think if Harv had to wait 30 years, maybe you should have to wait 30 years too. So that's all.
Hard to argue that. No. I put all this work together, and then Harvey gets in the Hall of Fame. I'm like, okay, goodness, all right. So, no, all pauses for her and for obviously Romano did a lot as well. I bet it's hard to argue that the 30-year wait, you know, if Harvey has to do it, then that's fair. But that's it for that's it for Gloves Off. A good run, a lot of stuff covered here. Next week I'm looking for Super League. They're on their break right now, so we're gonna dive into that. But yeah, Saskia, where can people find you?
All social media, Saskia _ Webber. Hit me up.
Very good, very good. And I'm Bill Reno. Again, all social media minus TikTok. I don't touch that.
Me either. I'm not a TikToker. So.
Yeah, you say that. All right. Well, thank y'all. We'll see y'all next week.
Bye, guys.